before listening to this sermon, if you could please read Matthew chapter 14, verses 1 to 14, and then also verses 22 to 33. There should be a link below this sermon that you can access those links. Film directors like Steven Spielberg like to keep you waiting for the big reveal. They keep you in suspense with the music, and they gradually raise the audience expectations that something big is on its way. And then the shark jumps out of the water. In the film industry, this big moment is called the big reveal. It's when the director keeps the audience waiting for the big monster to eventually appear. In the film Alien, you have to wait over an hour before you see the alien. In the film Jurassic Park, you're introduced to numerous human characters before you see the T-Rex. This can be frustrating as a film watcher, because all the audience want to see is the alien bursting out of someone's chest, or the T-Rex jumping out and biting off someone's head. Okay, maybe this kind of thing is an acquired taste. But if you really want to witness this big monster moment, you have to learn to wait. Now ask yourself this. What is the big moment in verses 22 to 33? What is the big moment in this story? If you read this story in a children's Bible, you might see that it's titled Jesus Calms the Storm. This is the big moment Matthew, the gospel writer, is building up to. The big moment when Jesus reveals his power over nature, and the wind and the waves immediately become calm. But note how Matthew keeps us waiting. Or more to the point, watch how Jesus keeps the disciples waiting for this big reveal of his power. Verse 22. Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. Jesus appears to leave his disciples behind to fend for themselves on the chaotic waters which they travelled across in the boat. And Jesus, well, he doesn't seem in a hurry to help. Verse 23, after he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Jesus prays for a while, and then he prays again. And it's only in verse 23 we read, later that night, Jesus was there alone. Jesus prays again and again and again and again. Meanwhile, the disciples were back in the middle of a chaotic storm. Now, we might view Jesus praying as very spiritual, but the disciples would have probably preferred that Jesus did something practical, like help them, for the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. The disciples are in the thick of a chaotic storm. And when does Jesus arrive to help them? Verse 25. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. Jesus arrives in the 90th minute, after over 9 hours of struggle throughout the night. And now the disciples were surely thinking, now is the time for Jesus to reveal his power and calm the storm. But in Mark's Gospel we read that he, Jesus, was about to pass by them. Rather than calming the storm, Jesus walked ahead of his disciples in the boat. It's as if Jesus was asking them to follow him through the storm. Verse 28. "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Jesus invites Peter to walk towards him on the water. But the big moment of calming the storm is still not yet. The storm is still going on. And so Peter will have to obey Jesus' words whilst the storm is still raging. And so, verse 30, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" Jesus recognized Peter's struggle to trust him in the middle of the storm. And if this was a science fiction film, we'd all be crying out, "Let us see the thing we've been waiting for. Show us the powerful monster. Reveal to us the big shark. Come on, Jesus, show us your power now." Surely now is the time for Jesus to turn the chaotic storm into calm. His beloved disciple Peter is sinking, and the storm is still going on. Surely now is the time for the big reveal of Jesus' power. But what does Jesus do? And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. I don't know if you heard that properly. Jesus makes Peter walk back to the boat with the storm still raging. Only when they climbed into the boat did the wind and waves eventually die down. If you'd have been Peter, you might well have asked why Jesus saved this big reveal of his power till the end. And maybe you've asked these types of questions to Jesus or God yourself. Perhaps you've said, "God, why do you allow suffering to continue? God, why don't you do something and put all things right?" I don't think there's a person alive who hasn't asked these types of questions. And for many, this isn't just a theological, philosophical question. It's a personal question that people wrestle with every day. Maybe you've asked Jesus, "Jesus, why must I endure this difficulty? God, why must I wait till the very end of my life to experience any type of real joy?" Like Peter, who walked with Jesus through the storm, many of God's people find themselves following Jesus in difficult situations, knowing that these situations will only get better either when they die or when Jesus comes again. If you are a Christian, you might join the disciples in wondering why Jesus doesn't bring an end to your difficulty today. I have zero answers to these types of big and difficult questions, but there is a pattern in this story that might help. The pattern is the call, the chaos, and the calm. Firstly, the call. Note the call of Jesus in verse 22. Jesus made the disciples get into the boat. Jesus called the disciples to obey him and set off on this journey. And when the disciples were in the thick of this journey, in the thick of the storm, he, Jesus, was about to pass by them. Jesus passed by and walked ahead of them on the waters. Jesus was asking them in the boat to follow him. When the faith of Peter was dwindling, Jesus called him to keep on believing. Jesus reached out his hand and caught him and said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" So in summary, Jesus' call involves the call to a life of faith in Jesus, the call to a life of obedience to Jesus, the call to follow Jesus whilst the storms of life are still going on. That's the call. And secondly, the chaos. The disciples' obedience to Jesus led to chaos. Your obedience to Jesus might lead to a different type of chaos as well. Follow Jesus, and you might find that your priorities are turned upside down. If you follow Jesus, you might find that your relationship with unbelieving loved ones becomes more tense. Follow Jesus, and you might find that your easygoing attitude to sin becomes less easy. As a Christian, you'll feel the pull of God to give up certain wrong behaviors. Jesus creates these types of chaos in people's lives, just like the teaching of John created chaos in the life of Herod. Remember the beginning of chapter 14. Herod was initially at peace with his adulterous relationship with his brother's wife. His sin, well, it didn't bother him that much. But suddenly, God's messenger, John the Baptist, appears and calls him to live differently. Like Jesus, John the Baptist told people to repent, that is, turn away from a life of sin. This created chaos for Herod. For Herod recognized that John spoke on behalf of God. And so suddenly Herod was caught between one call and another. In one ear was the voice of God calling him to turn from sin. In the other ear was another voice calling him to continue living as he was. Maybe you've experienced this type of tug-of-war for yourself. Follow Jesus or continue living your life your own way. Choose Jesus or choose this thing over Jesus instead. Jesus' teaching will turn a calm attitude to sin into chaos, as Jesus taught us all to take sin seriously. Jesus' teaching will turn your priorities upside down, but Jesus calls us all to reconsider what is truly important. Listen to Jesus, and, like Herod, you'll experience this tug-of-war. Herod heard the call of God. This call created chaos in his life. And what happened next? Herod chose to silence that call and create calm in a different way. Verse 10. Herod had John beheaded in the prison. This is one way to create calm in your life. Try and ignore and silence the call of God. This call might come to your life through your conscience, or through the words of the Bible, or through the words of a preacher like John who explained the teachings of Jesus Christ. One way to create calm in your life is to ignore the call of God altogether. One way to create calm in your life is to not believe in Jesus and avoid asking difficult questions like this. Why does God allow people to feel like He's abandoned them? Maybe you've experienced the difficulty and the chaos of wondering why Jesus doesn't offer you more practical help in your difficult situation. If putting things right is the right thing to do, why does God wait to do it? If you don't believe in God and Jesus, such questions, well, they won't bother you. But if you believe in Jesus, such questions certainly will bother you. So why? Why obey the call to follow Jesus? Why keep faith in Him despite the chaos that belief in Him brings? Both the chaos of having your priorities turned upside down and the chaos of asking difficult questions, such as, why does God wait to put suffering and injustice right? So why? Why obey the call of Jesus? Why keep faith in Jesus despite the chaos that might ensue? Why? Because the pattern is call followed by chaos, followed by a different type of calm. Verse 30. Peter was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and taught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Peter walked through that storm holding the hand of Jesus, and there is no better person's hand to hold. And here is an illustration to explain why. At the summer camp that I sometimes attend, we often go to big theme parks for a day out. As a person who hates big roller coasters, I always volunteer to go around with the kids who hate the big rides. This means the most frightening ride I have to go on is the Teletubbies Adventure Ride, rather than being forced to go on the Ride of Doom. Unfortunately, one year I was made to hold the hand of a kid who needed one-to-one support. And guess what? He loved big roller coasters. And so, for a rather terrifying 40 minutes, I had to hold his hand in the queue for a big roller coaster, or at least what I thought was big roller coaster. I had to hold his hand whilst listening to the screams and cries of other people on the ride. So what kept me in the queue? Why did I keep holding that kid's hand? Why? Well, it's because I not only saw people getting on the roller coaster, I also saw them getting off. They'd been through the chaotic spins, plunges, and sharp turns of the roller coaster, and they'd been through this chaos, and then they'd come out the other end. And could not the same be said for Jesus Christ? On the cross, Jesus experienced the chaos of feeling like God had abandoned him. On the cross, many wondered why God didn't offer Jesus more practical help. On the cross, Jesus experienced the worst of suffering. On the cross, Jesus had to wait. Jesus obeyed the call of God and then experienced the chaos of the cross. But what happened next? Jesus rose from death. Jesus went through the chaos, and then Jesus walked out of the other side. If seeing other kids safely come out of the other side of a roller coaster kept me in the queue, then surely seeing Jesus coming out of the other side of death should keep you and I following him as well. Jesus obeyed the call of God, then he experienced the chaos of the cross, and then that chaos was followed by calm. And if you follow Jesus, you will experience the same. Call followed by chaos in this life, followed by calm in the life to come. For the big promise of God is that one day all chaos will come to an end. One day God will make all things new. One day God will wipe away every tear from his people's eyes. One day, the Bible promises, there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. The Bible promises that one day nation will no longer take up the sword against nation, nor train any more for war. One day the earth is promised to be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. One day those the Lord has rescued will return. They will enter Zion with singing. Everlasting joy will crown their heads. Gladness and joy will overtake them, and sorrow and sighing will flee away. Like Steven Spielberg, God is working towards a big reveal. A big reveal when Jesus will come again and demonstrate his power over suffering, difficulty, and death. Sure, you and I might ask God why he waits such a long time to put an end to these things. After all, waiting is never easy. Just like the disciples, you might wish that God would calm the storms in your life today. But though we may never know why God allows his people to go through storms, one thing you can know is this. The pattern is call, followed by chaos, followed by calm. So, will you respond to the call of Jesus for the first time? If you've already responded to this call, will you keep trusting Jesus? Will you keep trusting Jesus despite the chaos you see in the world and that you feel in your life? Will you keep holding on to the promise of Jesus that one day he will return and turn all chaos into calm?